Then we come to the practice of anapanasati, recollection of the breath. How do you practice recollection of the breath? You are mindful of the breath all the time. In fact, the Buddha said that he used this practice himself, and it is quite a useful practice because the breath is with you all the time. Whatever you are doing, the breath never stops. Yes or not? Very faithful, going in and out, doing its work, giving you life. So, if you put your attention there, you are able to do it all the time. Not like some objects of contemplation. For example, some people, they practice the kasina, meditate on the flame. But the flame doesn't last 24 hours a day. Yes or not? After some time, you have to renew it. It ceases. But the breath, as long as you are alive, the breath is there. So it is a very, very convenient object of meditation. And if you practice meditation of the breath, it helps you to stop thinking. Actually, that is why it is very useful even for practicing Sati Sampajanna every day. If you are aware of the breath, the mind doesn't run all over the place. You are always in the present. You are always in the now. And that helps you in your contemplation of the body, of the mind, of the Dhamma, etc. And how to practice this breath meditation? When we sit down to practice the breath meditation, we have to keep the body very straight, the back very straight, and then we just relax. If you come back from work in the evening or something, don't immediately start practicing meditation. When you sit down, you just relax for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because when you come back from work, your mind is not fit for meditation. It has been thinking the whole day, so it has been quite strained. So you allow it 10 minutes to just relax. In fact, when you allow it to relax within the 10 minutes and you close your eyes, you will start to slowly become concentrated. Why? Because you have cut off your seeing, you have cut off your hearing, so the mind starts to concentrate. And this is quite important because for working people, because a lot of people, they go into meditation straight away and they get a headache. Sometimes people say a samadhi headache. So that is not advisable to meditate straight away. You relax for 5 or 10 minutes. Then after that, you start to be aware of your breath. And being aware of this breath, you don't have to focus it on a point. It's only in later books like the Visuddhi Magga, they tell you have to focus it at the tip of your nose or the upper lips. And some people say focus on the stomach, rising and falling. But actually you don't have to focus it anywhere. According to the Buddha's instructions, you just know whether it's a short breath or a long breath. So initially you just be aware. Just try to differentiate whether the breath is going in or going out. Whether it's going in or going out. The important thing is just to make a adhitthana, a determination not to miss a breath. Not to miss a breath. So just keep on following the breath for as long as you can. That is the most important thing. The longer you can follow it, the more you are getting control over your mind, because the mind always tends to run away. So you just note the basic movement of the breath, whether it's going in or out, in or out. You don't have to look too clearly into your breath because your mind is not sharp enough to focus on the breath. So just know that it goes in and goes out, goes in and goes out. And if you can follow it longer and longer and longer, slowly the hindrances start to suppress. When we start to meditate initially, two hindrances obstruct us very much. The first one is restlessness. Restlessness. When you start to put your attention on the breath, your restless mind pulls you to think. You think about your home, you think about whether you have closed the window, you think about your office problems, and it runs all over the place. So the restlessness is a very strong obstruction for beginning meditators. And then the second one is sloth and torpor. Because of sloth and torpor, your mind is a bit muddled up. You cannot see your breath clearly, especially this torpor. You cannot see clearly. Your mind is not focused. So you just don't have to you don't need to see your breath too clearly. Just be aware whether it's going in, going out, going in, going out, and slowly the mind will become more and more focused. And then it comes to a state where some bliss and happiness arises. This bliss arises because the mind is not scattered. When the mind is scattered, the mind is weak. When the mind is not weak, it is concentrated, then it is focused, and our mind is supposed to be originally bright, supposed to be basically bright and happy. So we are going back into that condition. So that is the way to practice the Anapanasati. And then this breath meditation is a samatha practice. Just now I talked to you about the hunter who caught 6 animals, how the normal mind is pulled in 6 different directions. So the Buddha said that is not the way to control the 6 animals. If you want to control the 6 animals, these 6 ropes that are tied to the 6 animals have to be tied to one strong pole, a stout pole. If you tie these 6 ropes to a stout pole, then these 6 animals which are going off in 6 different directions, they cannot go anywhere except round and round the pole, round and round, until they are tired, and then they will lie down beside that pole and sleep beside the pole. And that's the only way to tame them. This stout pole represents one object of meditation, not changing your object, one object only. For example, like the breath meditation, you just do the breath meditation. If any sound comes, you just ignore it. If any pain comes, also you ignore it. Anything comes, also you ignore it. Thinking comes, also you ignore it. Just put your attention on the breath again and again. Then that putting your attention on the breath only is tying the 6 animals to the stout pole. That is the only way to tame our mind. So now this when we do this kind of meditation, then our thinking stops, and this thinking stopping is very important, because whenever we think that I am arises, this I am or I exist arises with consciousness. Whenever we have the normal consciousness, the ego arises. The ego arises in our mind because of the consciousness. The consciousness is basically seeing. For example, when seeing arises due to conditions, because of an object, because of the eye, the seeing consciousness arises. And when there is seeing, there's the object of seeing, and there is the feeling that I see. This I see is something that is kind of naturally arises in our mind. But the aim of meditation is to see that actually there is no I. There is just a condition only arising. So, to see things clearly, we have to stop this thinking. That is why this samatha practice is important. So just now I was going on the contemplation of the body. Now we come to the contemplation of the mind. Is to be aware. Just now I said we practice Sampajanna. Is to be aware of the changing state of the mind. When feelings arise, you are aware. When they persist, you are aware. When they pass away, you are aware. When perceptions arise, you are aware. When they persist, you are aware. When they pass away, you are aware. When thoughts arise, you are aware. When they persist, you are aware. and they pass away, you are aware. Now this observing the changing mind does not mean observing the objects of your thought, because if you observe the objects of your thought, you are pulled by the thought and you start thinking and thinking and thinking, and then after some time, then you realize, instead of meditating, I've been thinking for the last 5 minutes. So it is observing the changing state of the mind and to see why the mind is changing, because it is changing because of conditions. For example, a sound, somebody says something to you, and because of that contact, you start to have a perception. This person said something very nasty to me, and then you start to proliferate, start to think, why did this person say such thing? And then you get angry. And when this anger arises, if you are caught up with thinking, you don't notice the anger arising. You are just angry and you keep on thinking and thinking and thinking, and you can't do anything because you have all this anger boiling inside you, right? So you are not seeing clearly. So that is why you have to practice the other things like to be detached, always to see that this body and this mind is not mine, it's not I, it's not myself. But just now I talked about the being aware of your mind changing, feelings arise and pass away, etc. Actually, to be able to do that, you need a very sharp mind. If your mind is not sharp, it's very difficult to be detached. It's very difficult to be in the present. It's very difficult to see things clearly. That is why the samatha practice is important to sharpen your mind so that you can practice the sati perfectly. Without samadhi, you cannot practice sati well. Now, if you put that practice just now, that to see all things as this is not mine, not I, and not myself, you have no notion of I and mine. In other words, no tendency to conceit. Conceit is that I and the mind. So in the Samyutta Nikaya, it is stated, he who has no conceits monks is he who has conceits monks is Mara's bondsman. In other words, Mara's slave. He who has no conceits is freed from the evil one. So when we watch our mind, we have to be careful. We are trying to get rid of that ego, We are trying to practice as though we have no ego, trying to be detached. Whenever the mind is changing, when feelings arise and all that, we are trying to be detached, trying to practice as though you are a liberated person. To be in this practice, actually, to be an Arya, to be a holy man, you have to start acting like a holy man. To have no self, you have to start acting as though you actually have no self. So when the ego arises, the ego surfaces, you have to be aware of that ego, and you don't listen to your ego. If your mind is sharp enough, for example, if somebody says something to you and you get angry, you get upset, but if your mind is sharp enough, then you ask yourself, who is angry? Who is upset? It is the ego that cannot stand, yes or not? It's only because of your ego that you got angry. If there's no ego, whatever people say, it doesn't matter. Alright? So, the ego cannot stand. So you don't listen to your ego. You don't allow yourself to follow your ego. So whatever happens, you try to be detached. So always watching your ego is very important. So if you watch your ego, then you don't react. You just respond. If people say something, does something wrong to you, you don't react. You just try to practice metta. Then the last one is to contemplate Dhamma. Contemplating Dhamma is very, very important. If we don't have Dhamma, then we can never get out of samsara. For example, there were a lot of external ascetics. They practice samatha meditation until they even have psychic power. But because they didn't hear the Dhamma, they cannot become enlightened. However, if they have jhana, then the mind is very clear. And then when they listen to the sutta, then they can become enlightened. I give you an instance of what actually happened during the Buddha's time, which is found in the Vinaya books. Most of you, because you are lay people, you don't see the Vinaya books. So I'll relate to you an incident here. After the Buddha had converted, not actually converted, these people came to listen to the Dhamma from the Buddha, and 60 of them became Arahants. So after there were 60 Arahants, the Buddha asked these 60 Arahants to go and walk and preach the Dhamma for the benefit of mankind, for the happiness, the well-being of the many folk. And he told them, don't two of you go by the same road, take different roads. He's telling them to walk all over India to preach the Dhamma. So after that, he contemplated whom should he teach the Dhamma to. So the Buddha found there were a group of ascetics called the Jatilas. These Jatilas are matted hair ascetics. They keep their hair very long, but they bundle them up. And then they are fire worshippers. They pray to this fire every day. Why did the Buddha want to go and convert them? Because they must have practiced jhana. Because they had practiced jhana, their minds were very clear. And if they attain 4 jhanas, they are able to see devas and they can talk to devas, some of them. So because they were ripe for conversion, the Buddha went to convert them. Now these 1,000 Jatilas, they had 3 leaders. These 3 leaders were brothers, Kassapa brothers. The eldest brother lived upstream. They were all living by the side of a river. The eldest brother lived at the highest upstream. The second brother lived in the middle. The third in the lowest part of the river. And the eldest brother, together with the other Jatilas, numbered 500. The middle one, there were 300 of them. The last one, 200. So all together, there were 1,000. So the Buddha went to the eldest brother to convert him first. And this eldest brother, he was very conceited. He thought he was an Arahant. So the Buddha asked for permission to stay. He allowed the Buddha permission to stay. Then the Buddha, over a period of time, showed him miracles, psychic power. And even the gods, the Sakadeva Raja and other gods, came to pay respect to the Buddha, and the Buddha let him know that even all these gods came to pay respect to the Buddha. But all the time, he thought this our Buddha had great psychic power, but the Buddha was not an Arahant. Only he was an Arahant. So one day, after showing him so many miracles, the Buddha decided to tell him straight in his face that he was not an Arahant, and he was not practicing the way to become an Arahant. Then he got a shock. Then he realized that it was true. Then he shaved off his hair and followed the Buddha to be a monk. And his other disciples, 500 of them, also cut off their hair, threw it into the river. All their fire-worshipping utensils, they threw into the river and became monks under the Buddha. So the hair and all their utensils floated down the river. When the second brother saw, they got a shock. Somebody must have killed his brother, he thought. They all ran upstream, and they saw that the brothers, all these had converted to be the Buddha's disciples. So they asked these who had converted, is it better? And then they said it's better. So they also shaved off their hair and converted. And the third brother and his group saw, they also got a shock by all this hair flowing down. So they also went up and they also converted. So the Buddha had 1,000 of these Jatilas. And then the Buddha decided to teach them the sutta, one discourse. Taught them only one discourse called the fire discourse. Because they like to worship fire. So the Buddha told them, the whole world is on fire. How come the whole world is on fire? The Buddha said, the eye is on fire, the ear is on fire, the nose is on fire, the tongue, the body, the mind is on fire. Why? Because the 6 sense doors make up the whole world. The whole world is in our 6 sense doors. So the Buddha explained. And then, after giving this discourse, all 1,000 of them became Arahants. Arahants, not Sotapanna, Arahants. That shows their minds were so clear from this samadhi that they had. So after that, the Buddha brought them to Rajagaha. Rajagaha is a place where King Bimbisara resided. And a few years ago, when the Buddha was not yet enlightened, the Buddha passed through Rajagaha. And King Bimbisara was very impressed with the Buddha at that time, the Bodhisattva. So he asked our Buddha, our Bodhisattva, to stay in Rajagaha. But the Buddha said no. The Buddha wanted to continue on his way to practice, to seek for enlightenment. So he told the Buddha, he said, one day if you are enlightened, please come back here. So after the Buddha was enlightened, the Buddha came to visit this King Bimbisara in Rajagaha together with 1,000 arahants. So this King Bimbisara had a great feast, great dana prepared for these monks. Then he called all his people to come and listen to the Dhamma. And according to the Vinaya books, 12 Nahutas of people came. Nahuta is supposed to be a very large number. So suppose we assume it's about 1,000. So 12,000 people came to listen to the Dhamma. And the Buddha gave them a graduated discourse. At the end of it, all of them became Sotapanna. So you can see that by listening to the sutta, just by listening, they can become Sotapanna. I'm quite sure not 12,000 of them all meditated, right? They are ordinary people, so I'm sure some of them never meditated, and yet they all became Sotapanna. But you can see how different people, when they listen to the sutta, they attain Aryahood at different levels. This is because of the samadhi they have. There are basically three types of samadhi. Shallow concentration, medium concentration, and perfect concentration. Shallow concentration or momentary concentration is like a person who does not do any meditation. But when he concentrates on, for example, listening to the Dhamma, in the suttas, the Buddha said, when one listens to the Dhamma attentively, the 5 hindrances exist not, and the 7 bojjhanga go to completion. That means are complete. That means to a certain degree. When he says that the 5 hindrances exist not, that means to a certain degree they exist not. They are not obstructions. It's just like, for example, lalang. Lalang, if they are very tall, you walk through, they obstruct you. But if you cut down the lalang until there's 2 inches or 3 inches left, there's still lalang, but it's no more an obstruction. So in the same way, when one pays attention to the Dhamma teaching attentively, then the hindrances are not there, and it's sufficient for a person to attain Sotapanna if the person does not meditate. That is momentary concentration. Medium level concentration is when a person practices to a certain degree of concentration, short of jhana, short of perfect concentration. And how do you know you have attained that degree? When a person attains that degree of concentration, the anger and the lust is suddenly reduced. If a person has a angry temperament, after attaining that concentration, that tranquility of mind, the mind suddenly, the anger is very much reduced, and the sensual lust also very much reduced. That kind of person, when he listens to the sutta, he can become a sakadagamin, a second stage, stage Arya, sakadagamin. Once returner. That means coming back to the human birth one more time. But if a person has perfect concentration, any jhana, if he listens to the sutta, the right sutta, the sutta by the Buddha, then that person can become an anagamin or an arahant. And it's very clear from Majjhima Nikaya number 64 that to become an anagamin, you must have jhana. Or even to become an arahant also you must have jhana. Because in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 64, it is said that there is a path to the abandonment of the 5 lower fetters. Abandonment of the 5 lower fetters means attaining anagami, third fruition. And then it says there is a path leading to the there's a path to the abandonment of the 5 lower fetters. That anyone without coming to that path shall know or see or abandon the 5 lower fetters. This is not possible. So you must follow the path to attain the 5, to become an anagami. If you don't follow that path, it is not possible to become an anagami. Then later the Buddha explained what is that path. First jhana, or second jhana, or third jhana, or fourth jhana. So from there, this sutta, you can see very clearly that jhana is necessary for attaining anagamin or arahanthood. And just now we saw that Sati Sampajanna and this samadhi go hand in hand. Vipassana and samatha go hand in hand. So lastly, I'd just like to mention that in the suttas, it is said that there are 5 occasions when a person, when he become an Arya. When a person listens to the sutta, he can become an Arya. When a person teaches the Dhamma, when a person repeats the Dhamma, or when a person reflects on the Dhamma. And the last one is during meditation. And you find that the Buddha's disciples, most of them, they attain arahanthood not when they are meditating, when they are out of meditation, when they contemplate on the Dhamma, usually, then they attain arahanthood, or they attain aryahood. So it depends on your condition of your mind. If your mind is very clear, like for example, a person who has attained jhana, when he contemplates on the Dhamma, he becomes an anagamin or an arahant. And then for a person whose mind is not so clear, for example, a person who does not meditate, but with some good karma, that means no karmic obstructions, then when that person listens to Dhamma attentively, that person also can become a Sotapanna, first stage Arya. So I'll stop here.